Thank you, Skip, and thank you all for joining us today. This is a somber spot, and it's a special spot. And we gather here each year to reflect and pray and remember those who made the greatest sacrifice to keep us safe. On this memorial wall, as was stated, there are 86 names. Names like Emery Campbell, Archie Calvin Buggs, Kimberly Sue Tonahill, Jonathan de Guzman, Jeremy Nicholas Henwood, and many others. And behind each of these names is a family, the survivors, wives, husbands, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, children, and some of them are here with us today. The rest of us cannot ever fully imagine the pain and the loss that you must feel. So when you meet someone in law enforcement, be sure to thank them. And when you meet a person related to someone in law enforcement, thank them as well. They are making their own sacrifice. And, by the way, it's okay to give them a hug, too. So we gather here today to reflect and remember. But we need to do more than that. A thank you, a prayer, and an annual ceremony is not enough. Because those in law enforcement step up for us every day, we must step up for them. Because they have our backs, we must do all we can to have theirs. So far this year, at least 35 women and men in law enforcement nationwide have died in the line of duty. And they include a California Highway Patrol officer who was struck and killed by a car during a routine traffic stop, a police officer in Louisiana who died in a motorcycle crash while he was escorting a funeral procession, a police officer in Davis, California, Natalie Corona, who was shot and killed after she arrived at the scene of a 3-car traffic accident. Nearly half died in incidents involving gunfire. Their average age was 40. Their average tour of duty was 12 years. These were seasoned professionals who put everything on the line to keep us safe. Yet, the split-second, life and death decisions required of those in uniform are often second-guessed. Those in law enforcement willingly face danger every day, and we should be doing all we can to give them the tools and the resources they need. Instead, there are those who would handcuff the ability of law enforcement to protect us. Case in point, State Assembly Bill 392, which is currently being considered in Sacramento. I have grave concerns about this legislation as currently written. It would place an unreasonable burden on law enforcement officers in use of force situations. Officers would have to show that their use of force was necessary, but for decades, the standard developed by the United States Supreme Court has been whether it is reasonable. AB 392 would make it easier to file criminal charges against officers who use lethal force if they failed during the incident to consider alternatives. Think about that. In other words, it would ask those in law enforcement to do the impossible, to hit the pause button at a critical moment with lives on the line and weapons drawn, and weigh other options before using force. Those in law enforcement are our heroes, but they're not superhuman. AB 392 would not only put their lives in danger, but the lives of those they're trying to protect. Folks in law enforcement are always often subjected to Monday morning quarterbacking. This bill would make it much, much worse. I want to take a moment to commend the California Police Chiefs Association, the Peace Officers Research Association of California, the California Narcotic Officers Association, and the Deputy Sheriff's Association of San Diego County, and other law enforcement organizations for opposing this bill. On the other hand, State Senate Bill 230, backed by those same groups, is also under consideration in Sacramento. It would require law enforcement agencies to adhere to the Supreme Court's reasonable standard. We always need to take officer-involved shootings seriously, and we need to hold the line against lax gun laws that expose those in law enforcement to greater danger and prevent them from doing their jobs effectively. Officer training is critical too, including how to de-escalate potentially deadly conflicts. But what we don't need to do, and what we must not do, is subject our peace officers to even more second guessing, to force them to always look over their shoulders when their lives may be in jeopardy, or the lives of others. I brought up these same points yesterday with the Board of Supervisors, and the majority of my colleagues thankfully voted to ask the state to stand by the current reasonable standard. Those in law enforcement can speak to this issue far better than I can. They know exactly how serious this is and what's on the line. A couple of weeks ago, the Sacramento Bee ran a column by a Sacramento County Sheriff's deputy, Julie Robinson. Here was the headline, quote, "I was shot and my partner died. And here is why I am opposed to AB 392. Now here is how she described the incident, and I quote, "I'm a Sacramento County Sheriff's deputy who survived a split-second encounter in which I was shot and my partner was killed. It happened fast, but it's a nightmare that will haunt me for the rest of my life. My partner and I had responded to a call about a disturbance at a local auto store in which an unruly customer was causing trouble. When we arrived on scene, we approached the subject inside the store. There was no indication he was armed or had a weapon. As we approached, he immediately backed up and began moving erratically, as though he were preparing to run. My partner headed toward the front door to block him, while I tried to stop him from the opposite side. Suddenly, there was a gun, followed almost immediately by a deafening boom as the suspect fired. What followed was a terrifying and deadly firefight. The subject shot my partner in the head and the back, then continued firing. I immediately returned fire and took action to defend my partner, the store's employees, and the customers who were in the store, and people who were in neighboring stores. I was shot but kept fighting. Like every cop I know, I take my sworn oath to protect and serve seriously." Deputy Robinson goes on to say that AB 392 is, and I quote, "Monday morning quarterbacking at its worst. Rather than helping police make better decisions by improving training and clarifying use of force policies, AB 392 takes a punitive approach that turns cops into criminals while eroding our fundamental right to defend ourselves. By slowing police decision-making in deadly situations when split seconds count, AB 392 endangers the lives of police and the safety of the people and communities we protect. It pretends about reforming the system. Instead, what it really does is ask officers to protect the public with both hands tied behind their backs. She's right. I know we didn't gather here today to talk about legislation and how those in uniform are often unfairly judged. Their jobs are hard enough without others questioning every move that they make. But it's important that we fight for those who fight for us. It's important to do more than reflect and remember today. Today, we salute our fallen heroes and we pray for them and their families. But we can also take action. Now, more than ever, let's stand behind those in law enforcement, give them the tools and the resources that they need. For that's the least that we can do for them. The least that we can do for the fallen, for the families, and for those who are here in uniform today. Thank you to all those in law enforcement for all you do. And I know I speak for residents across our county when I say we can never thank you enough for the job that you do. Thank you.